Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me today is a phenomenal woman who is widely known as the growth motivator. She helps individuals and organizations shed what no longer serves them so that they can grow with clarity, confidence, and purpose. She's a nationally recognized healthcare professional, educator, and motivational speaker. She brings over 30 years of expertise in healthcare leadership, compliance, and operations, guiding people and teams through mindset shifts, strategic growth, and transformative change. But her most important attribute of all is she's a woman of God, and she's taking time out of a very busy schedule to hang out with us this evening to share a little bit of her story, a little bit of her journey with the hopes of encouraging and inspiring and uplifting others, especially when it comes to dealing with the challenges and storms of life that we all go through in some fashion or form. So with that said, it's my privilege and honor, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you our very special guest this evening, Dr. Lisa Campbell. Dr. Lisa Campbell, thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Thank you so much for being here. I don't take it lightly when someone allows me to be on their podcast, right? I say allow because you have many choices out there. But at the end of the day, I'm really here to be a blessing to others. I think it's selfish to go through things and not share them. I have found that when I share what I've gone through, it helps me continue my healing process.
Love that. Love that. And that's exactly why we have you here this evening. Like as you stated, I don't just randomly select people. Oftentimes I let God lead the way in me pinpointing who that person should be. And I reach out and just operate on faith and see if there's a connection there to be made. And again, I'm just thankful that you responded accordingly. And I know you're going to be a blessing to both myself and to my listeners this evening. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and jump right on into this. But before we get into our segments, I do want to give you an opportunity to share a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what you do, kind of give our audience a taste of who is Dr. Lisa Campbell.
I love that. But let me tell you how I start off every presentation I give silently. I always say, God, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight. We have talked enough about what I do, who I serve. I'm from the south side of Chicago. I'm here to be a blessing. So let's get into it.
There we go. I love that. Love that. And it's appropriate that you said that that's how you like to start out your conversations because if you paid attention to our title of your show this evening, something that I noticed that you hold firm as one of your things to stand on is about silence provides clarity. And I think that's so important to take that moment to really just take it all in, whatever that is, so that you can hear from God and know what those next steps are to take, kind of get the distractions out of the way, clear your mind, make it free of everything that would otherwise keep you off track or off out of sync or out of focus. So again, I appreciate that. We're already jumping on it right out the gate. So this is what this is about, and again, I'm glad for that. Um, so as is the case, of course, Dr. Lisa, anytime I bring anybody on the show, one of the things that I like to do is to take a few moments to reflect on, the beginnings of one story, because I really do believe, in all of our various journeys, no matter what they are and what they entail, there's things that happen earlier on in life as far back as our childhood, whether it's the people that we meet, the encounters that we have, things of that nature, that while we don't necessarily know what all of that is supposed to mean or how it all connects back then, as you get older, as life shows you different angles, good, bad, or otherwise, you start to reflect on those moments and begin to connect the dots. And for me, what I've learned in talking to others, it just kind of causes some light bulbs to come on. It causes some aha moments where you say, you know what, that's why I had to go through that. That's why this particular scenario happened. Again, good, bad, or otherwise. So with that said, if you would, take us back to those early days of you coming up and kind of share with us what was it like for you growing up, fond memories that you have about growing up, as well as if there's any challenges that come to mind, you can share those as well. Kind of give us the backdrop of where your story begins.
I just want you to know I was about to bust out into song, Take Me Back. But I said, let me stay on track. Let me stay on track. So when I think about my childhood, I think about how divorce didn't define me, legacy did. And so let me explain. When I was 9 years old, my parents got a divorce. I was nine, my sister was four. And over the years, I realized that impacted her differently than me. And I feel like growing up, I had a very normal childhood, right? I went to school, I came home, I did my homework, I went to bed, I played outside. I played in my white Easter shoes in the mud, even though my mother told me not to go outside, right? I did all the things. And I think a lot of people believe that divorce automatically means instability, right? But
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't my story. My grandparents, they made sure that we did not miss a beat. And one of the things that they did for us that I've been reflecting on it so much that it's kind of scary because I wish I had more time with my grandparents to get more of the legacy that they were leaving us. But with my grandparents, there was structure, there was presence, there was consistency. We had six vegetables at every meal. You know, we wasn't eating out a lot of the time. But my grandfather was born when he was 50. I was born when he was 52. He died when I was 52.
Mm.
So he just died last year. So he was here for 104 years. And one of the things I realized about having them in my life is that they didn't try to overcompensate for like my father, you know, getting remarried and not necessarily being there like he was. Their presence literally anchored us. They took us to church. They are the reason that I'm still doing Easter speeches today. That I was singing in the choir, that I was on the usher board, that I am the woman that I am today because of them. They gave me that stability. My grandfather modeled responsibility, love. He said to us all the time, I don't care how other people treat you. You need to love everybody regardless. And I know that he loved everybody because when we went around the Chicagoland area telling people that he died, these people was breaking down crying. We in the CVS drive-through, and I'm saying, "Hey, I want to cancel his prescriptions. I had called in, but you guys are still calling us." And they were like, "Well, what's the patient's name?" And I said, "Campbell." I mean, literally through the drive-through, they are breaking down crying, which of course made us cry. But at the end of the day, they made sure that the rhythm of our life continued. So divorce was a change because we had to move with my mother instead of living with my father and mother, but it wasn't a disruption to my foundation. And I think that's very, very important.
I love that. I love that. First off, appreciate your transparency and sharing that. It's never easy for when a divorce scenario arises, particularly when there's children involved, and particularly if those children are young, as you and your sister were at that time. And so, it's great to know how even in what the world might see as a moment of dismantlement in one's life and disruption, and that's all of a sudden meaning that your the way your story is going to play out is going to be one of dead end and non-success and a whole bunch of other host of problems. God has a way of stepping in and making sure that the gap is filled, and in your case that gap was filled by way of your grandparents, making sure the structure was there, making sure the consistency was there, making sure that the presence, we can't emphasize that enough, the presence in your life, to just kind of keep you guiding. And I love the fact that you said that it wasn't even about overcompensating. They didn't say, "Oh, because you didn't share a story that said, because your parents divorced, that meant that they let you do everything that you wanted to do, or they bought you a ton of presents or things like that to help to soothe the pain." And instead, they showed you how, at a very early age, they showed you how to adjust, how to pivot when something gets off track, when things go sideways, that this is not a time to give up. This is not a time to throw in the towel, but this is a time to, okay, This is what we got going on. Let's pivot. Let's shift. Let's do what we need to do to stay on track. The plan hasn't changed. Maybe the setup has changed slightly, but the ultimate goal is to make sure that these girls are raised properly, decently, and in order, being growing up to be productive women in society, doing great work. So they were already, to me, it's their way of already seeing what you were capable and potential and had the potential for. And so they're kind of lining it up already. And that's just, again, how God moves in situations like that. You talked about your grandparents, making sure that you're in church. So clearly they had God in their lives, and they were transitioning that down to you and making sure that, hey, you, part of the process in getting through all this is going to be this relationship that you need to have. Yeah, it's great to have the grandparent and grandchild relationship, but there's another relationship that needs to be in alignment as well. And so I love to hear that story, because again, so much in today's world, especially for young boys, young girls of color that run into these scenarios, it's kind of like there's so much ease in throwing out the stats and saying that, oh yeah, this is not going to end well. She's probably, her and her sister's going to probably end up being, not finishing school and being in some, wilding in the streets and doing all that kind of stuff. And as I said, the reason why I like to have these conversations reflecting back to the beginnings, because when I think about the work that you do today, much of what you do today, whether you realized it, early on, or it took years later for you to make the connection, this was positioning you to do what you do today, to be in front of people that you didn't know that you were going to be in front of, having opportunities like this to speak to people from all walks of life and all backgrounds that you didn't know at age 9 that you'd be talking to, but in order to prepare you for such a moment, for such a time, for you to walk in your purpose, the very reason why God created you to be here, you have to go through sometimes a series of storms, a series of challenges to get ready for that. And so that's why it's so important for us to say, you know what, when we go through half the time, probably more than half the time, it's not even about us. It's really about the people that he's preparing us to be of service to. And so just even in these early moments of our conversation, I can see that resonating in just what you shared in your upbringing, and really emphasizing, driving home the point that, divorce, yeah, it happened, and I'm sure it was difficult. Even as an adult to this day, I'm sure it's, sometimes you're like, I wish things would have been different, but there was a purpose in all of it, and was necessary to take place, again, in order for you to be where you are today, doing what you're doing, just scratching the surface, because you're not done yet. You still in the mix of it all. So these are great conversations to have, and great reflection moments, and I hope our listeners are understanding too. You gotta have to put it all together. None of this stuff happens by accident. It's a divine design, strategically outlined and down to the details of how this is all going to play out for you to ultimately get to where you were positioned and created to be. So again, I appreciate you sharing that. So Dr. Lisa, as obviously you had a phenomenal childhood, despite, the divorce going on with your parents, and, having myself growing up on the South Side of Chicago, I know that that's not an easy life to live in terms of the environment, but you didn't go without. You made your way. You transitioned into adulthood. You're doing great and wonderful things. You got PhD after your name, so we know you're smart. You got something. You got a lot to offer, a multitude of people, a multitude of organizations. So there's no mistaking about that. But the reality is you live long enough. There is going to come a point in time that challenges and storms will come your way. Some of which will hit you a little different than the normal day-to-day nuances, the normal lifing type stuff. Sometimes you'll get hit with something that when it arrives in your life, it's so heavy to the point where you might feel stuck. You might feel helpless. You may feel a sense of, being defeated. Like, how am I going to get through this? How am I supposed to overcome that? Even if traditionally you've been good at working your way through those challenging times, everybody has something that's going to hit them a little different. So if you would tell us about a time that's exactly where you were, that something came across your life's path, that storm hit you, and you had your doubts, even with your upbringing as a believer, you had your doubts, you had your concerns, like, what am I supposed to do with this? Why is this happening to me? How am I going to get through? Obviously you're here today, so we can trust that God worked that out. But maybe back then you had your doubts and fears about that. What was that situation like for you? And what was ultimately the turning point when you began to see some light at the end of the tunnel and coming up out of that?
Yes. So I'm so glad that you are asking us and then highlight a time, because your listening, viewing audience might have thought, oh, well, she had this great childhood, so adulthood must have been great because she's still standing today. Not. When I was 30 days from turning 19, I gave birth to a little girl named Jasmine. Now, growing up in the church, um, I hadn't had sex, but it only take one time to have sex. This is an adult audience, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay, good, good, good. So I only had sex the one time. I got pregnant, and I decided that I needed to keep my daughter because, they said old school, you make your bed so you lay in it. So about 9 months after Jasmine was born, my mother said something's wrong with Jasmine, and I'm like, Mom, what do you mean? Well, at this age, she should be doing X, Y, and Z. So we took her to a podiatrist on the south side, and he said, not all children develop at the same time. Just, keep moving forward. So here we are. A year has passed. Jasmine is not walking. Jasmine is not talking. She's making sounds, but we really don't think that she can hear. And so I started to go to these different specialists, and one after the other, at 19 years of age, they started telling me all the things that were wrong with her. And at that point, we all go through phases in life. There's no perfect Christian. So we all go through these phases in life where you kind of forget from whence you've come. You forget about, that foundation that was laid for you. And in 1993, I woke up one morning feeling extremely heavy. Like, God, why me? Why did you give me this disabled child? Her father wasn't in her life. Why me? And it became so heavy that on that day, it was a spring day in 1993, I was like, I'm out of here. I don't even remember where she was, but I took 30 Tylenol. Next thing I know, I'm in the emergency room. They're putting charcoal into my nose, down into my stomach to try to pump the Tylenol out, which then resulted in a 45-minute ride over to a psychiatric hospital on the west side of Chicago. And I'm sitting there talking to the nurse, and she was like, there's nothing wrong with you. You just having a hard time. And so I obviously left the next day, and nobody in my family ever talked about that day. That's mistake number one. Because oftentimes we file things away in the do not recall folder of life. You must understand what happened, why, and how you're going to move forward. So I'm going to give you the short version. So I ultimately realized that God gave Jasmine to me because he knew I could handle it. He knew that I was positioned to be her advocate. And in the midst of being her voice, I found my voice again. And here we are at 52 and 34, and life is good. Jasmine didn't walk until she was 7. She still can't hear, but she is happy. She's healthy. And honestly, Jasmine living her best life because she cannot hear none of what's going on. And I often say, Jasmine, a lot of times she'll just be laughing. I said, ooh, the angels are talking to her. I know the angels are talking to her, having a whole conversation. And so from that experience, advocacy became my second language. And I learned how to speak up even when my voice was trembling. I learned patience on another level, because to watch somebody not walk for 7 years, it was difficult. But over the years, I've come to embrace it. And now I'm able to help others who may have a child with special needs, who feel like, they're alone. I felt like I was alone. I didn't know anybody who had a special needs child. No one in my family had a special needs child. So there were many times that I felt alone. But I'm going to tell you something that I grabbed onto. And it, back to bending the choir. Oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear. I realized that I had put that part of my life away. And when I brought it back in, that's when things started to turn around.
Wow, wow. Love that. Again, thank you for your transparency and sharing that. I think it's hard to imagine being a parent, particularly a young parent. And it's interesting that you started off saying you became one at 19 because my mom had me at 19. But just, to first of all, entering into parenthood at such a young age and then finding out later on that your child has some type of disability of some sort, and like you said, hearing all of these doctors saying this is wrong and that is wrong, giving you further thoughts in your head like, did I just what have I this having this child, was this a blessing or was this a curse to me? And again, God will use moments like this, not so much because it was about, making Jasmine not, be able to hear, or delaying her, ability to walk, or any other functions or things of that nature that were of concern. But sometimes God has to take us through a storm, and you kind of alluded to it, when we kind of get comfortable in life, where we, for whatever reason, it could be a variety of things, but when he finds us getting a little too comfortable, a little bit distant, if you will, from the foundational parts of how we were raised, and calling upon him and trusting in him and leaning on him, sometimes he has to allow a storm to come into play, that he knows that on your own, in your own strength and in your own way, you can't fix that by yourself. You can't throw money at it to make it go away. All your degrees and your accolades and all of that doesn't make it go away. He has to sometimes allow us to, as part of that spiritual growth process, he has to allow us to go through a moment in time where you can't do anything but sit still and talk to him, that he's the one. And he wants you to do that because he wants to show you that, hey, first of all, that feeling that you were going through where you felt like you were alone, you're not alone. I've been here the whole time I've been right here. So let me remind you of that. And then he says, this thing that you think is impossible to overcome, so much so to the point that you were ready to take yourself out for it. If it was intended for you to depart this world, which there have been a lot of people who, had they done the same act, they wouldn't have survived taking 30 Tylenol. They wouldn't have made it through that. But you made it through that. So that lets me know that he said, you got work to do. You're not getting away from this that easy. Okay, we're going to clean that up. We're going to clear that up. I'm gonna send somebody to you in the medical profession that's going to say to you, ain't nothing wrong with you. You're not crazy. I know that this is procedure to send you here because of the act that you chose to participate in, but you're in your right mind. You're just going through. You're just overwhelmed, as would be expected for a young mother being faced with something like this. But it was also a reminder to you that there's still more work to do, that you still have purpose, that you still have value, that you are worthy, and that this world needs you. Now, you may not have known at that time exactly how you were going to be used in that capacity, but it was clear that God was sending the message then. This is how I'm going to show you this. So, one, I'm going to show you the progression over the years, how your child that everybody or the doctors or whomever thought, there was something wrong with or whatever. You know what? She's going to be all right. She's going to have exactly what she needs to thrive in life, to be happy in life. I love the illustration that you made about the fact that sometimes you just hear her laugh, and you made the connection that of her listening to the angels, and also being able to actually be in a good position. Like, we don't typically associate not hearing as a good thing, but the way you put it, like, she doesn't have to even be distracted with the mess and the stuff of the world that's going on. She don't even have to hear that. She could be selective as to what she receives. And the idea of someone who can't hear, but also in the same breath for you to say that you oftentimes hear laugh. Like you think, well, what are they laughing at if they can't hear? Well, it's just something about God's favor over one's life that can bring joy your way, even in the midst of what the world might see as being a deficit or a deficiency of some sort. She's embracing that clearly, and like you said, living her best life, doing her thing, and has not allowed that scenario to make her feel any less worthy, any less valuable. And she got that, I'm sure, just it dripped off of you, regaining your confidence, regaining your focus, regaining your understanding that he's been here for me. He's carrying me through all of this, and he's not pushing me aside. He's not forsaking me. In fact, he's going to take what I thought was the worst thing that could have happened to me, and he's flipping that thing around and allowing me to now be an advocate, to be a blessing to other people in a healthcare capacity, in a motivational capacity, in a way that allows people to, as your tagline, talks about, the growth motivator. You got to go through stuff in order to tell people how to grow. You can't. I just can't give you the basic instructions because people wouldn't relate to you if all you were book smart. I mean, people might be impressed to a point, but but to connect, to relate, to make people see you for your vulnerability, for your transparency, that requires you to have to go through stuff. And so to hear your story and the way that you're sharing it, I know for a fact that there are listeners who are being blessed by you sharing the way that you are, because this is in no way easy to go through something like that, but it's also a reminder that nothing is too big for God to handle. Not only for you personally, but again, he can catapult that thing into lanes and areas that you didn't even see coming. And when you're finally in that mode, when you're finally in that moment, you're like, wow. Like, I think back, I reflect back, like, I was ready to take myself. You almost have to chuckle about it to a certain degree. Not that it's funny, but I really was about to take myself out for something. And now when I look at what God has done and what he's continuing to do with this, it seems silly that I even contemplated it. But I had to go through the moment. It was necessary for me to go through it. I had to hit rock bottom, if you will, in order to have that moment of silence so he could provide the clarity that I needed to have to understand that, hey, this is only for a season. This is not the end of your story, that there's more to this. Just watch me do my thing. Watch how this movie plays out. And you were the main character of it, by the way, if you didn't know that. So, get your lines right, get your scenes together, because we got a story to tell. And so I think that you sharing your testimony as you have so far, this is really powerful. This is really beautiful. And again, it's just a reminder of God's favor and love for us. For those of us who understand what that relationship is like, it's one of those, if you know, you know. But it also is a reminder that, there's no guarantees that life is going to be smooth and easy going. You talked about that earlier as well. Like, people think that, oh, she had a great childhood, so surely adulthood was, on and popping. Well, I've had moments, but yeah, let me tell you about this. This bump, just when I was starting off telling you about the divorce that took place, I didn't see this coming, so again, I appreciate you sharing as you have, and this is definitely a powerful story that needs to be told. And I love the fact that you're doing so transparently and such with genuine nature, because people need to hear this and just understanding. Even if they don't have a kid that they've had to go through this with, it doesn't even matter. It's still applicable to just the storms of life, regardless of where they come from. Just being reminded that nothing is too big for him to handle. So, again, I thank you for sharing that. Um, so Dr. Lisa, obviously dealing with a child going through the situation at a young age and having the medical issues of concern, dealing with divorce of your parents at a very young age, those are some heavy things for anybody to have to ever go through. And sometimes life hits like that. And then sometimes life is just life, and whether it's somebody got on your nerves today or cut you off in traffic or just came at you the wrong way or whatever. That said, if you would share with us when you do go through challenging times, again, whether it's something major, if it's just the day-to-day lifing type stuff, what is it that works best for you in terms of your process, the way you work through challenging times? Like, what does that look like, and how are you able to go through it while still keeping a level head, keeping your focus, keeping not allowing yourself to get too far off track, but just being able to process it in a healthy and a productive way? What does that look like?
That's actually a really good question because I mentioned earlier that after that day, no one helped me unpack what had happened. And honestly, because I want your listening viewing audience to know this, I went to therapy, but I truly did not fully unpack it until 2022.
Hmm.
I went on through life, went to school, all the things, but when I finally took the moments to unpack it, it involved a lot of writing. And at the time, I didn't know that I was writing a book, but I literally started from the beginning and was just writing down all the things I went through, how it made me feel. And I realized that many of us allow situations to hold us hostage. And I realized that holding all of that stuff really prevented me from being completely in alignment with my assignment on this earth because I had not unpacked it. And when I was unpacking it, life was good. I was an entrepreneur. I was working a full-time job at a university online. And one day, this new dean came in, and she ain't like me. Number one, I use my voice, right? I'm not afraid to to state my opinion. And one day, um, I had just finished writing in my journal, which then turned into a book. And I was in a meeting with her. I don't know why I said this. I said, I am no longer going to be held hostage by these salary and benefits. And she said, what do you mean by that? I said exactly what I said. I realized that there was something else for me, but it wasn't until I started to do the work, right? A lot of people say, oh, you got to pray about it. Yeah, you got to pray about it. But you also, in my opinion, you need to write about it. You need to cry about it. You need to get it out of your system so that you can think and hear clearly without having all that weight on you. And so when I started doing that, I started feeling lighter and lighter and lighter. And I started to have this level of peace that I didn't even know was possible. See, when you're a church kid, you know all the songs. Oh, what peace we often forfeit, right? We know all the lines. But it wasn't until I started feeling it, and here we are 4 years later, that I started feeling it, that I realized that the process that I went through was something that I needed to go through. And I call that the resignation that set me free because I was doing all the things, taking trips, just all the things. Remember, you said money can't buy happiness and all those things? I was taking all the trips and doing all the things, and I stripped down to where every month I got to figure out how I'm going to pay the mortgage. But I got this peace that you cannot pay for. And so during that time period when I started writing, and I think for the ladies out there, I think I was in the menopause. And so everything just started feeling so heavy. And the more I wrote, the lighter I felt. And I realized that I was releasing all of that stuff and it made me free. And that's when I realized that endurance is no longer growth, it's a compromise. I was compromising the world for what God had given me to offer to them. And I'm going to end by this because I have to tell you this. So, when I was going through that process and I had wrote my resignation letter, I was on the phone with one of my friends and I said, I need some kind of tagline. And so immediately she was like, oh, definitely motivation, right? So we just sitting around kind of tossing out these different things. And then she said it, the growth motivator. She said, you motivate people when you are not even trying. And I realized it's from all the things that God allowed me to go through so that I can help others. Because you know that old saying, you can't pour from an empty cup? Well, I want to make sure that when I step in front of a microphone to talk to others, I'm speaking at a conference, that I don't have all of that weighing on me so that I can just pour in them so that they can walk away different. Because I'm tired of people going to conferences and reading books and they're the same. I want people to experience what it's like to go through this transition. But it requires you to do two things. Number one, you got to close some doors. And writing allowed me to open and close the doors because I had never talked publicly about that day in 1993. No one talked about it. But when I put it in a book, I knew everybody could hear about it. And once it got in the book, I started talking about it more and more. And the more I talk about it, the lighter and freer I become. And it's great over here. I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back.
Wow, wow. I love that. I love your approach because what I was hearing as you were sharing this, um, I think first off, I like the fact that you pointed out how we can sometimes confuse endurance with that peace or that endurance with that freedom. And it's kind of like sometimes what we do is we suppress what we're going through and figure if we're staying busy and even if that busy produces some good stuff, that means we're okay, that we've overcome whatever it was that we went through. And in actuality, all we really did was put a big old band-aid on it. All we did was sort of tucked it away in the back of our minds, hoping that it would magically just kind of go away or we'd forget about it. But all the while, it was always lingering there. And so the word you didn't necessarily say the word, but you spoke the message. I felt like you had to arrive at a point where you were prepared to forgive. You spoke about how your situation was not discussed. Like everybody just played crazy, like they didn't know that I just took 30 pills, and we just gonna act like that didn't happen. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand that in those times that particularly in our community, in that backdrop of time, that that was kind of the norm to do stuff like that. We don't talk about whether it was overdose, whether we're talking about molestation, whether we talk about anything that looks bad upon us. We just supposed to just kind of tuck it to the side, act like it didn't happen, suck it up, and keep moving. And that's supposed to fix it all, but that's not really how that works. And unfortunately, there are people who have gone for decades holding something inside that just never got addressed. It just never got, you never had that opportunity to just release it out. Whether it was, in your case, you did it by way of writing. Sometimes somebody just needs to scream it out. Somebody just needs to, but there has to be a part where it comes up out of you, because as long as it resides in you, then it's nothing more than poison that's just kind of just marinating inside of you, and you just somehow thinking that it can continue to stay within without ever having an exit strategy. This is going to forever impact you. There's going to be something, even in the midst of all of your successes, you're going to still be topped off until you get that up out of you. Once that's up out of you, and as it was in your case, now it opens up a whole new lane that you thought you was doing something before. Now I'm really able to do something because I took this up out of, up off of me. I gave myself permission to release, that it was okay for me to release. It didn't matter. It wasn't a time limit on it that said, well, this happened back when you was 19. So you can't be tripping about it now in 2020. Yes, I can, because I never got a chance to process this. And so, yeah, it might take me a while to get to this point, but this was necessary in order for me to go to that next level, to go to that next path that God had for me. But He was not going to let me enter into that space, because in order for me to be effective, for me to impact in the way that I needed to impact, this part of the process, this part of the journey had to happen. It's the reason why you're able to do what you, and I love that you brought this up. There's so many gurus, experts, with all the conferences and all that and I'm sure you, just like myself, have been in many situations, throwing a lot of money to this one and that one and the other one, because they know the answer. They got the key to make it all right. And you'll do that and you all fired up and pumped up. And then when it's over, you don't feel like you know anything different other than I just dropped whatever that money was. Yeah, I know that. I know what's missing out of my account, what I just paid for, but did I get out of it what I was supposed to get out of it? And it requires what you just spoke to for you to go through that separates all of those type of things from the realness of the moment. And even down to your tagline, the growth motivator. It's catchy. It represents who you are. It represents, as your friend shared, that you are about motivating people. But I look at it even deeper and said that tagline was more for you than it was for the people that you come alongside of. Because I'm thinking to myself, as a person who motivates, as a person who encourages, a lot of times people in our space that we're in, we're good at doing it for everybody else but ourselves. We can give everybody else the growth, the motivating advice, the encouragement, the uplifting, the empathy, the all of that. But then we all of a sudden get blank when it comes to us. And so it raises the question, what happens when the encourager needs to be encouraged? What happens when the motivator needs to be motivated? What happens when the one who grows, helps others grow, needs some help to grow? Where do I go for that? And so sometimes we have to be reminded that, we matter too, that it's great. I'm all for you can't pour from an empty cup, all of the catchy sayings and all that. And that's all true. But it applies to us too. And and oftentimes I reference this, my stepdad used to tell me, there's a such thing that he used to call healthy selfishness. There's a healthy selfishness that you got to practice sometimes. And if that means that I got to tell you no, to tell me yes, if that means that I got to put you off into another time until I've had a chance to pour into me, then that's what I got to do. And you took that opportunity after all that time to say, wait a minute now, I don't have any regrets about all the lives I've changed and the works that I'm doing and all that. But now I got to take a moment to say, how can I make me be, again, to remind me of what my value and what my worth is, and take the time out to cleanse myself, to heal myself, because I'm not going to be any good to anybody else until I get this up out of me. And God will be patient. He'll let years and years and years go by. Stand by patiently. You're going to get it eventually. Even if it took to 2022, okay, you got it now. Okay, now that you got it, we're ready to go to this next level, to this next platform. And I'm glad that you had the experience that you did to elevate to where you are now, because now you're hitting it at a different level. Now you separate yourself from the multitude of other motivators and speakers and encouragers out there. You don't just run into the mix and the flow of everybody else. You now have etched your way in being different, unique, coming at it a different way than what traditionally people get to see on a day-to-day basis. You do it differently, which is why you have the people drawn to you that you have. The reason why people call you upon the stages that you're on, because they can get anybody to do it, but everybody can't deliver it the way that it needs to be delivered. And that's where you have the opportunity. That's where God has distinctly created you to be able to do it the way that you do it. So I love your approach to that. And just even when we talk about, how you work through dealing with challenging times, there are a lot of people who, don't understand the power of journaling or just writing some stuff out. Sometimes that's what you just got to do to get it out. There's no one set way of working through challenging times, but it is important that you have an active thing that you do on a regular basis, so that you're not waiting for the scenario to arrive. I mean, the storm is going to come. It's not a matter of if, but when. But am I waiting until the moment hits before I start preparing? or am I preparing on a day-to-day basis? Do I have a routine of self-love, self-care? And when I talk about self-care, I'm not just talking about getting nails and hair done and all that, but just taking time, again, go back to our title, taking that time of silence so that I can receive the clarity that I need to know, okay, this is the approach that I need to take. You had a silence moment that lets you know what? I'm tired of being dependent on a paycheck. Somebody can dangle that in my face, to make me do whatever. You, you know what? I'm good. I'm comfortable. I don't know how this is gonna play out. I'm sure you probably had that conversation in your mind. Like I'm getting ready to walk away from my job where I know that what the check look like every 2 weeks and the benefit package and all of that. But it's just something about the peace and being able to arrive at that moment and just, be like, it's not that you don't care. It's more of I just have a confidence and a faith and a peace about it all that, you know what, I'm ready for whatever happens is happening, but I'm not looking at it like it's going to be a bad thing. I'm just waiting to see how God moves in this situation. So to hear you speak in that manner is powerful. And I hope that our listeners are understanding that when you get anytime you arrive at a peace moment, where you, like I said, are you able to walk away from something that in the past you would have never had the guts to do, that you would have been too dependent upon, that you would have been too fearful in walking away because you became so comfortable in that space. Part of that peace embracing process means stepping out of your comfort zone and entering into an area that you're unfamiliar with, but it's necessary for you to go into in order to grow to that next level. And so everything that you just shared is an example of what that looks like. And I hope our listeners are encouraged by that, particularly for those who are finding themselves in a struggle moment right now. And whether it's to take that next leap into entrepreneurship or to take that next leap and walking away from a toxic relationship, whether it's somebody that you're seeing or whether it's just a friend or somebody that you've known for a long time, but they're clearly not on the same path that you're on anymore. And maybe it's time to part ways because they don't provide you the level of support that you need to have at this phase of life. I try to tell that to my daughter all the time, that there's going to be some friends you have now that you won't have, some ways down the road. And it won't be because you had an argument or a fight. You're just growing and going in another direction than they are. And it's just, you're just not going to be on the same page, but it doesn't mean you're going to be without people. God is going to bring in some new people that's going to be in alignment and in that same path that you're going. And so it's just a part of that growth process. So for my growth motivator, it's part of the growth process that we got to go through to get to where we need to get to. So again, I appreciate you sharing that. So Dr. Lisa, as you reflect over life, all that you've been through, all that you've experienced, good, bad, or otherwise, if you could sit across the table from younger Lisa, 19-year-old Lisa, who was about to just check out because life just felt that heavy to her, what would you say to her that you believe that had she known what you know today, might have helped her navigate, whether it be that particular moment or other moments in time as a young mother trying to raise a child with disabilities? What would you say to her that you believe would have been helpful in just kind of helping her guide through the difficult times, the challenging times, those moments of times where she felt like she was all by herself? What would you say to her, as well as to our listeners who may currently, be going through some of what you talked about today, or maybe feeling that same sense of, I'm all in this by myself. I don't have the support. I'm scared to take that leap into the areas of the unknown. I know that I'm capable of making it. I feel it in my spirit that I can do it, but I'm still scared because I can't, I just don't know. What would you say to them? What would you say to younger Lisa?
So to them, I would say you are allowed to outgrow the rooms that you prayed for. That doesn't make you ungrateful. It means that you are evolving. I'm going to say that again. You are allowed to outgrow the rooms that you once prayed for. It doesn't mean you're ungrateful. It means that you are evolving. So that's what I would say to them. And then to younger Lisa, I would say, you know that teacher who told you you talk too much in third grade? Tell her, nah. Because people pay me to talk.
There you
Go and
go.
live it.
I
I
love
did
that.
have that. You know the CPS report card, little check mark, talks too much
Hmm.
in class?
Yep, I remember the check marks and E G S U A B C D.
Wait a minute, now we not that old with them letters.
It was like some people don't even know what that is. Like I only know it's A B C. No, I remember E G S and U back in the day, all that kind of stuff. But
Mm-mm.
you're right though. Um, like you said, all the people, the naysayers, the people, and sometimes a naysayer can be somebody who verbally said what they said to you, that you couldn't be what you could be. But then some of the biggest naysayers are the ones who don't say anything, that they can be actually there to support and encourage you, and they sit back and say nothing. They don't tell you good job. They don't tell you, hey, I got this ability, this skill set that I can be of help to be of support to you. They just let you kind of do whatever. And they wait it out. And then as soon as they see you doing something, all of a sudden, hey, if you need anything, let me know. I'll be more than happy to help out. And you know what? I needed you when I was going through my struggle stage, when I needed that extra hand, that somebody to step in. Not that we asking people to do stuff for free or whatever, but you could have been there to support me, encourage me, keep me. But no, you chose not to. So don't come running up to me now that that now I done did the hard part, and now you just want to kind of ride on the back end. But people are like that because unfortunately there are some people who don't want to see you win. They don't. They envy the idea of you somehow overcoming what they saw maybe in your darker days, in your darker seasons of life. How she do that? How she able to do all? I didn't even have nothing like that, and she doing better than me. People get like that, and you just have to understand that that's just a part of the reality of it all. But at the same time, you can't let it defeat you. Can't let it get you down. You have to kind of tune that stuff out, from a distraction standpoint. But you can also use that as motivation to say, you know what, keep on talking. Keep on talking. Keep telling me what I can't do. Keep telling me what I'm not going to accomplish or achieve. Keep telling me that I'm crazy, thinking that somehow people are going to pay me one day to stand on the stage and talk to them for however long, and not even question my fees. Keep on doubting that. And I'm going to show you better than I can tell you. But more importantly, I'm going to let you know who's responsible for making it all happen. And I'm going to say it boldly, unapologetically. And all I can say to you is, it is what it is. If you want some of this, I can tell you how I got it, and who I got it from. But if not, that's cool too. I'm going to move with or without you. Either way, it's going to happen because God said so, not because you were against me or you didn't choose to support me in any type of way. So I think that's definitely very important to remember. And again, to our listeners, is just again not allowing yourself to stay stuck. I know it's hard. I know it's difficult. I know it's always a challenge to step into that space of the unknown. But you have to, at some point, if you really want to achieve growth, if you really want to go to that next level, whatever that is for you, then you got to be willing to, like you said, to open up some new doors and to close some old ones. It's just a part of what it is. Standing still and doing nothing, or just keep talking in circles about it, it'll pass the time, but it won't make any movement. And so that's just a part of the growth process. And again, you're hitting all of those buttons, all of those points exactly the way that we need to hear it, because this is what's going to make it happen. And I appreciate that of you. You're not trying to sugarcoat it and make it all nicely packaged in a ribbon and saying, oh yeah, you're making it sound just easy peasy and no problems at all, smooth sailing. No, you're going to have to go through some stuff. But again, having that relationship with God, having Him a part of the process, you don't have to worry about going through it by yourself. You don't have to worry about carrying that weight by yourself, and that's a big difference maker in it all. So again, I appreciate that. So, Dr. Lisa, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed you sharing your story. Such powerful message that you have for us today. And as I said at the top of the show, I was confident that you were going to be a blessing to myself and to my listeners, and you have not disappointed in any way in that regard. Please know that I welcome you to come back on the show at any time in the future to discuss other things. I know that this is just a snippet of what you have to pour into us, but I'm thankful for what we were able to do this evening, and I'm so glad that you were again able to share as you have been in this short time that we've had together, because I think these are the type of conversations that we have to have, and I really do believe that it's a blessing. It's game changing for some people, And so I appreciate your vulnerability and your transparency and sharing the way that you have this evening. But as is customary here on the Blessings in the Streets podcast, we do want to take an opportunity to celebrate you, to love on you, to lift you up. If you got anything going on now, coming up, I don't care how big or how small it is, we want to know all about it, how people can connect, support, be a part of it in any sort of way possible. And if at the very minimum, just keeping you lifted in prayer and what God is doing with you and through you in the various works that you're a part of as you walk in your purpose in life. So tell us what we need to know, Lisa, so we can be locked in and loaded on what you got going on.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for having me. Thank you for the prayers. I will continue to pray for you as you are blessings in the street. I think we need to be in the streets, blessing others. And I want to share with your listening, viewing audience that 4 years ago, I chose alignment over comfort. And
Mm,
that is what's driving everything that I'm doing now. So in September, I have a new book that's coming out. The name of the book is called Shed the Weight, Achieve Personal Growth by Shedding What No Longer Serves You. So that's number one.
mm,
And that's going to be September 19th that it releases. Also on September 19th, I will be hosting my second annual women's conference, Sorry Men, but the name of the conference is Women Evolving, Igniting Growth, Healing, and Transformation. It is the WAIT
mm,
conference. There's a theme here. And this all came about because I realized, and you actually touched on this, so this was perfect, that a lot of us are carrying this weight that has us in this holding pattern. And one weight in particular is that comparative weight, where you're looking at everybody else's highlight reel and you feeling bad for yourself, like you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, all when AI made their whole setup. It's not even real. And so, through the conference, through the book, as well as other speaking engagements, I am on a mission to help others shed the weight. And then, lastly, I also have a podcast. It's titled 52 Authors, 52 Weeks. It airs on YouTube and other channels on Saturday morning. You can find me at Dr. Lisa L. Campbell everywhere. Um, I will pop up. Make sure the one with the brown skin, but it's me.
It's like there's Lisa, and then there's Dr. Lisa. Recognize the difference between the two. This is who we talking about here. So, to my listeners, she's giving you ways to connect with her. Be looking out for her book, conference. Check out her sites, check out her podcast. Everything that she's doing, this is all God divine, designed, and driven. It is, again, not by accident, but it is definitely an opportunity for you to be blessed. It's also an opportunity that if you know somebody else that didn't get a chance to tune into this episode, but you know that they need some of what Dr. Lisa is offering, definitely get connected with her, follow her, be a part of that, share it with other people. We all need to be empowered. We all need to be encouraged. We all need to be uplifted. And definitely when it's coming from a source that is rooted in Christ, that makes it all the more special, all the more credible when you understand that it's where it's coming from, where the foundations is rooted from. It's not about another check. It's not about just another, so many likes and followers and all of that kind of stuff. It's about doing the work that you were created to do. And so, anytime you have the opportunity to be exposed to someone like this, doing the work that she's doing, definitely lock in, get connected, and be of support in every way that you can. And like I said before, at the very minimum, keep her lifted in prayer because to do this type of work is not easy. There are days when it does still feel lonely, where you don't necessarily have the support and things of that nature that help make these things happen. So anything of that nature that you can offer is definitely going to be well received, appreciated, and welcomed. I'm sure she's not going to turn any of that love down that you give to her as she's working through trying to, as she said, stay in alignment. And I think that's a great way to kind of wrap up our time together. Is about alignment. There's something about that alignment that makes all the difference in the world. That just makes the way life flows go a little bit differently than it would when I'm just chasing, chasing the money, chasing the titles and the accolades. But I'm in position. I'm working in a way that God intended for me to work, and doing and producing the type of things that He specifically designed for me to do. So again, Dr. Lisa, I appreciate you doing that and sharing that. And for my listeners, if you've enjoyed our broadcast this evening, if you've been blessed, if you found it to be informative, encouraging, uplifting, please do subscribe, share, like, comment, because this is what the Blessings in the Streets podcast is about. We want to encourage, we want to uplift, we want to pour into you, being transparent, being vulnerable, stripping it all off, not putting on any facades or anything like that, admitting that, hey, we go through just like everybody else goes through. Just because we're hosting the show doesn't mean we got it all figured out and nothing is imperfect in our lives, because that just would not be true. But the difference, however, the difference maker in it all is the relationship with God. And I'm here to tell you, if that's not a relationship that you currently are involved in, today is a mighty fine day to make that decision. And I promise you, it'll be the greatest decision that you will ever make. It'll be life changing, game changing in a way that is cannot be compared to anything else that you'll ever experience. He loves you unconditionally. He wants nothing but the best for you. He's going to be there for you in those good times and in those difficult times when you feel like nobody else cares or nobody else is around. He is there, and He just wants you to lean on Him, trust in Him, abide in Him, and just watch Him just do wonderful, miraculous, wonderful things in your life. So again, plenty to go around for everybody. Get in where you fit in. He's there for you. He loves you, and He wants you to have all of Him that He has to offer. So definitely keep that in mind. And just remember, here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and I thank you so much for tuning in. Till next time, again, keep leaning on Him, keep trusting on Him. Cast your burdens, all that weight, all that pressure, give it to Him. He wants it all. And just allow Him to just do, again, just wonderful and powerful things through you, as well as just equipping you to be blessed in abundance beyond your wildest imaginations. And just, again, just being able to experience that peace that we talked about tonight, to experience that alignment that we talked about tonight, to just experience what it just means to be truly locked in and focused on what matters the most in life. And so with that said, you take care of yourselves. Have a great rest of the evening. We'll look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.